So we understand and we know one thing for sure as Catholics, and it is that we are Eucharistic instruments of reparation. That is the center of our faith. We are Eucharistic. You see, one of the greatest damages that the devil inflicted on Christianity was the Reformation, because the devil knew what he was doing. It was one of the last battles, wounds inflicted to the church because of the sins of the church. Because we are at fault with this. This is not simply the devil doing it. The devil comes in when we open the door. So the church was in real bad shape in those years. And he took a chunk of Christians of the church and took away their sacraments, especially confession and the Eucharist, the virginity of Mary, the relationship with the motherhood of the church, and left them as a hyper Christianity, a floating Christianity called solo Biblia, only Bible. And we can see the disciples of Emmaus, how they were on fire with the word as they were walking home with Jesus talking to them, but they didn't know he was Jesus. It was only until he broke the bread, sitting to dine with them, that they saw him as Jesus. And so the word alone on the road, though the fire of the word was in their hearts, didn't reveal to them that presence of Jesus in their hearts. So that's why the disciples of Emmaus and the breaking of the bread of Jesus is the greatest confirmation of the true presence of Jesus in the bread. So that shows us how important it is for us to understand who we are. We are Eucharistic instruments of reparation. The greatest gift that Almighty Father has given to all of humanity is the Eucharist. We know that the Eucharist protects all of humanity, not only Catholics. We as Catholics are the instruments of the Eucharist, but instruments for the salvation of all of humanity. I always bring to mind a prayer that Our Lady of Fatima taught the shepherds, and we use it in the Rosary almost everywhere in the world, in the church, in the Catholic Church, when we pray the Rosary. Between decades, part of the prayer says, "Lead all souls to heaven, especially those in most need of thy mercy." And it doesn't say, "Lead all Catholics to heaven." No, it says, "Lead all souls to heaven," meaning all of humanity. And that's why we as Catholics have to understand our mission. Our mission is souls. Everyone's souls. Because God created all of us for salvation. He didn't create anyone for perdition. Because God is love. And we have to understand that love. And that's why the mission we have as reparation soldiers of the Eucharist is the mission that asks us and challenges us to really be holy, because St. Paul tells us about the Eucharist this way. He says, "Do not dare to come before the altar of the Lord to eat of this bread," meaning the Eucharist, "if you are not prepared, because you will eat your own condemnation." That's how radically he puts it. And we have to understand the seriousness of this, how we need to understand we are vessels of mere clay, and we carry the treasure as St. Paul teaches us, but we need to keep the vessel clean. And that is our duty. Keep the vessel clean, and the Spirit in you will do the rest. But our commitment with God is faithfulness. And holiness comes from faithfulness. That's where holiness comes from. A lot of people wonder, how can I be a saint? It's almost impossible to be a saint, some people think. But the truth is that to be a saint, you need to be good. And to be good, you need to be brave. because you need to have courageousness to forgive. You need to be courageous to have patience, to have charity, to have compassion, and to love with the love of God. You need to be courageous. So you need to be brave to be good. And goodness is what leads you into holiness. Cowards don't make it to heaven. We need to be strong and courageous to really love. And we all know how much it takes for us to truly be faithful. And that faithfulness is what is demanded of us when we go to communion. See, when we go to receive the Eucharist, we are to have our vessel clean, because God is going to repair through our communion salvation of souls that are dying at that very moment in danger of condemnation. Every time we go to church and we go to take communion, people are dying at that very moment. And Jesus, on the perfect time, rescues a soul with our communion. But our vessel has to be clean. That's why it's so important